Greetings, everyone. Here we are on the Nonstop Vision Train Global Art Jam, still rolling. And we're here today for Vision Train in Focus. This is a spotlight that one of our dear conductors, Marina from Zion Rebels, streaming into our space station from Brazil, has called into manifestation to help spotlight the amazing creators and conductors and artists that have been keeping this train rolling for the past 5 years. I mean, we come and go, get on the train, get off the train, but this has been a train that doesn't want to stop rolling. And so this is an effort to continue to tell the story. There's a lot of stories to be told here, and I think a lot of inspirational stories of what brought us to the train. And so, Marina, passing it over to you. Thanks so much for the invitation to be here.
Thank you so much, Amanda. I cannot thank you enough for putting this community together and collecting all these souls around the globe and manifesting them inside of this Zoom room that we are in this non-stop Zoom room. My friends, we are here for more than 4 years and it's non-stop. This is amazing. It's like a safe container, a safe place that you can come in and enjoy and create art and have a share with artists from all over the globe and bringing anything in life, not only about art, but anything and having this mirror of each other. And we are here now today for the Vision Training Focus. This is a trip, like we call here on the train, right? We do this trip every 1 month or 2 months with the aim to spotlight the artists from the Vision Train because we have so many artists that ride this train. And we have so many artists, each of us have this amazing experience, life experience that somehow brought us together here. And having this opportunity, these 2 hours to share about it, is just so inspiring. It's just amazing to see how each one of us is so diverse. And at the same time, we are so connected. And yeah, today we have the artist friend Joe Phillips connecting from Wales, right, my friend?
Yeah,
Hi,
that's right.
Joe.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yes, thanks for coming. Thanks for accepting this invitation. And we are excited to hear more about your life, your story, your creative path. And so I believe let's get started, right?
Yeah, sure. So I've got a bit of a presentation there, so I'm just going to share screen, and
Nice.
then yeah, I'll talk you through my journey. Yeah, thank you so much. Just a little word on the Vision Train. You know, I've been so inspired by this community. You know, we've each held each other accountable, whether we're on the train, whether we're off. Just knowing we've got a community of people around the world that share a sense of purpose from creation. You know, that we can go back to, and you know, Isanga, right? You know, we have ideas, we go deep into these other worlds, and then we kind of bring it back to the community. And it's like, have you seen this too? Like, what do you make of this? You know, and so to have that, you know, always there, you know, and you're always here. My phone, there's a WhatsApp group. My phone pings off every day. There's a couple of messages on there, and you're right in my pocket every day. And it's, you know, it's you know, I love it. So anyway, without further ado, I'm gonna get my share ready.
Yeah, well, the sense of belonging to a community, this is so precious. Yeah, this is really precious.
Okay,
Yes,
can we see this?
yes.
Okay. So up until very recently, this was my morning walk to work. So um, we kind of live on the coast here. So there's a bunch of islands a little bit further back. We're right on the south coast of Wales. And those industrial kind of tower stacks you can see there, those are from a Dow Corning chemical plant. Now, it used to be BP, British Petroleum. And, I just always think it's important to kind of start, with the roots, right? So it's a complicated place, really, Barry, because it grew up out of, former pirate haven. There was a lot of smuggling around the south coast of Wales and, very much kind of free-spirited, free-willed people up until the time big industry kind of came over and built the Barry docks, using Irish indentured servants to kind of build that, which is part of my ancestry. And it was the largest coal export import in the world for its time. So BP kind of came, a few decades later, and it's the place where it's very likely that napalm used in Vietnam was made, right? So it has this, this karma to it, and I think one of the things that we see as artists is this idea where we can alchemize the past and create something, positive from that. So my positive from BP is the fact that my great grandfather had a job in this power plant and he supported his 6 daughters, my grandmother being his eldest. And it's kind of in his honor that, I've worked hard in my community and tried to provide, for my, I've got so many cousins, he had 6 daughters, right? So there's, tons of us around. So yeah, it's a bit of a strange thing knowing the impact that places like this have had on the world, but also it's provided a living for my family, right? So it can be kind of confusing when it comes to stuff like that. So this is my great grandfather and grandmother with his daughters. My nan's the one in the pink in the middle, and there's 3 of her sisters. And we're a very close family up until they passed. My great grandfather, I lived up until 24 while he was still alive. So getting to spend that much time with him was just a real joy. There he is. I was small once upon a time. I'm 6'4" now, so I don't think most people believe that I actually started small. But I was a duck once upon a time. So I guess aside from an art competition in school when I was a young child, I won like a £10 voucher for drawing a daffodil, and I got a load of attention from my family. Which was kind of chaotic, right? My mum was a South Wales, amphetamines user. My dad was away in prison when I was born. My mum got into a very heavy domestic relationship early on in my life. So, it was a lot of chaos around. So when I won this prize and I had all my attention and all this love, like, oh, well done, it was something that I kind of latched onto. And then, okay, I was always drawing, I was always coloring in, I was always making art then. So, Barry being a post-industrial town, the scale of Barry kind of got inflated during the coal exporting era. And then when that industry dried up, there was just a lack of jobs, like many other post-industrial cities around the UK, where there's just like this kind of ballooned population with not much infrastructure to actually support people or enable people to support themselves. So yeah, like having this interest in art early on, and then around about the age of 10, I started painting models with my dad. So, we'd paint little toy soldiers, and it was our thing that on a Friday night we would, play together with all my friends. So there was kind of this other incentive to like be part of a community through our creating that way. So there's a thread of it there. And then, I think I was 19 years old when I found tattooing then. So I'd gone through school. I had 16 different schools, very chaotic early life. Didn't really understand what stability was at all until I found tattooing. And that was what really gave me stability. having such a permanent media that had this kind of profound effect on my friends and my loved ones who let me tattoo them along the way was really, it gave me a sense of purpose, right? But also it taught me patience, and all those hours working in the skin, attending to detail, it was a real good way to kind of train my artistic muscles. So early on in my career, I kind of felt an affinity for black and gray realism. It was always something that was popular. So it's, and then I would, before I did any of the more cosmic stuff, before any psychedelics, I do a lot of realism, and just enjoyed that style of work. So going from things like that. I think before the psychedelics, these were two of my biggest projects on rib panels, and doing some portraiture. So this is kind of how I supported myself for the first 5 years of my tattoo career. And I've met my wife. I had a child. Lived in Guernsey in the Channel Islands, which is a very strange place. It's a tax haven. So being around vast wealth inequality, very, very high average wage in the place, but it normalizes the erosion of financial stability, right? Like it's kind of like keeping up with the Joneses with people on the island to ensure that their trust funds that they run and organize are doing really well, right? But then the knock-on effect in the world is that it destabilizes global markets. But it's in this beautiful place. So, I lived there for about 10, 11 months and learned my craft with some very experienced artists. So I picked up a whole bunch of skills. And then, about 4 years into my craft tattooing, I moved back to Barry about 24 years old. So still doing stuff like this around then with the realism. And then in around 2012, 2013, I broke up from my partner at the time. There were bad mental health issues. My son ended up going back to live in Guernsey in the Channel Islands. And that was pretty hard to deal with. So I just got my head really into my craft, really into tattooing. I rebranded the shop and I brought another artist in, and I started experimenting with some psychedelics. But this shop here, I was in for nearly a decade, right up until COVID. And, it was just ideal for 1 and 2 artists, private appointment only studio. It was like really starting to, find my feet as a self-employed person and to, balance all these things. Visits with my son every 7 weeks, where I'd have him for a week, so 7 weeks a year, I'd just take out of my job and I'd just be a dad full time, and look after this little bundle of energy, which was always a big driving force. So this was the inside, it was just pick up the guitar in your gaps. So you can see on the left-hand side there's a bunch of, these, the dragon sculptures, or these, they're made by my dad. So my dad, as well as encouraging me with painted models, he would create things out of wood, recycling, reclaiming different things, and just, instilling those types of values on me. So then, it came to my first tattoo conventions, and I realized like the power of community in terms of holding you accountable to, to what we're doing here. And then I found the work of Jonathan Salter and the other artists of Thrader. So going to the conventions, I kind of realized that what I'd been doing was very derivative. I wasn't doing anything particularly imaginary. If I was doing realism, it was off of somebody else's photographs. And so I really wanted to kind of find my own way. I was struggling with my mental health, missing my son all that time, and just, as the relationship between myself and my ex-wife, would ebb and flow between very good and easygoing and very difficult. The instability there would really, I was looking for an answer. And so, finding Thrader, finding that these guys were going deep into the psychedelic realms, as well as, hearing that they're great for mental health and for post-traumatic stress disorder. I started really kind of latching onto this idea of, an impactful psilocybin trip to see if I could, loosen some things up and just gain some new perspective, So yeah, again, just on Thrader and the other psychedelic artists there, you know, it was just like super inspiring to me to be like, what, you can see this stuff, you know, do you bring this stuff back, you know? And you know, this is a work by Jonathan as well, one of my teachers. Alex Gray as well, who had worked with Thrader as well. You know, Android Jones, and Farbo. So these were kind of the early artists that I ended up picking up from just the online community that was kind of arising on Instagram, that I was able to kind of check out daily and see what they were posting daily for the first time. You know, watching an art movement evolve and grow in real time. What did they post today was just really exciting for me. So I was just, you know, I kind of latched onto that. And then it was this trip here in 2014 where I went to Amsterdam, you know, and I got a bunch of these little humble nuggets, these little psilocybin truffles by here. And, you know, I went in, and so while I was there, I stopped off at a place called the Hill Street Blues down here. And I had this tracing paper sketch pad. And so this was like really like a breakthrough point for me. This was when I had taken my dose of mushrooms. I'd lied down in my bedroom, I'd surrendered to the experience, and I'd seen these kind of golden gates. And I was kind of so shocked of the realness of this other level of reality that I just kind of, oh God, you know, just kind of totally snapped me off my track. And I couldn't get back in straight away. But I did go down to the cafe. I did a bunch of drawing into this tracing paper sketchbook. And the exercise that intuition led me to was to just be very free and very loose on the paper with just a blue pencil onto tracing paper. And I had this auditory hallucination. So every time that I would see a pattern and get too involved, this auditory hallucination would almost mock me and say, well, you think you're better than the universe, do you? And then when I just kind of relaxed and just let my hand go free, it would cheer me on, you know? So every time that I found myself getting knotted up, I just flip the page and then start a new flow again. And so I went through the whole tracing paper sketchbook, and then you could see through the layers, and actually noticing this kind of harmony and balance through the layers downwards was something that I found fascinating, you know, just, you know, this idea that these rhythms in nature come through us when we kind of go into that no mind space and don't try and force it, you know. So that was more of like a principle of painting. It wasn't that I went in and saw something to bring back. It was that I went in and found a feeling to follow, and that I then built a process around that. And, you know, so that was kind of the start of it. You know, I would do a lot of paintings, sketches like these in my sketchbook, just being super loose. At first, they were kind of convoluted and busy, you know, but again, just like learning to be free, noticing like structures that would just kind of form, and realizing that like just through value, you can kind of create a sense of depth and perspective. You can see it got a little bit more refined and a little bit more kind of minimalistic as time went by, with less lines and less strokes, and it just kind of, you know, naturally evolved that way through the sketchbook. And then this tattoo happened, right? So as is often the case throughout my path, you know, I'll go somewhere either into the psychedelic realm or through my creative practice, and then I'll go back into tattooing and I'll find something has happened. So not long after my breakthrough trip in Amsterdam, my buddy Mike had come forward. So this design here was one that I'd done for a guy that had come in and he'd asked for this specifically. And then he messed me around after 3 hours of trying to work on it with him. So, you know, kind of in frustration, kind of just like, whatever, I'm going to put it on the internet now. I'm going to see if somebody else wants it. And lo and behold, a friend of mine was visiting from London that weekend. You know, it's a 4-hour trip away. I don't see him very often. And I'd had the cancellation on the weekend, and he came in and he had it all done. So it was pretty synchronous that it all kind of lined up nicely. And I just fell in love with doing this kind of galaxy bright color stuff. You know, I'd gone far enough into my career that I knew how to put this in on a technical level. And I was really kind of like, okay, what can I do with this skill set, you know? And then when it came to my first conventions, then I did this piece, and I won my first award, and kind of really enjoyed kind of putting those bits together. And then when I wanted to develop it a little bit more as something of my own, after having some critique and saying, you know, that's something different, you know, why don't you go further into that style, you know? I didn't want to just use Hubble Nebula copied and pasted into a tattoo image anymore, you know? So I started getting Copic markers out and I was painting all the backgrounds in. And I realized that the best, most organic shapes came from that sense of just letting go and relaxing and just allowing it to come through me again. And actually years later, when I studied with Amanda, and we'll get to that in a little while, but just on this point, I explained something similar to Amanda and she's like, yeah, that's just channeling, you know? And it was like, ah, right, okay. There are words for this, you know. I'm trying to tell some of my friends here in South Wales and they're looking at me like I've got two heads. And you know, and then I'm around this group of 20 odd people, and yeah, we have the language for that one, Joe. You know, you're not the strange one anymore, you know. It's just like, ah, great, thanks anyway. So yeah, and that kind of went on for a couple of years then, you know, do a couple of conventions and, you know, enjoying the process of just kind of creating more of these. And, you know, slowly but surely my body of work just kind of filled up, and there seemed to be a bit of a consistent identity. You can kind of see the color scheme in my background here. It's kind of the same color scheme that was in the Egyptian one just now. So I tend to have like a signature kind of rainbow color palette that I love using, that I come back to every couple of years to see how my visual language has changed, but using the same parameters of color. And I really enjoy that. So this was the first time it kind of got out of the small frames, out of those little space bangers, and actually onto something bigger. And I kind of started to envision it to be something that covers space a little bit more, and maybe a fabric or a textile or something like that. And that kind of led me up to Vienna, right? So this was like a very impactful time of my life, you know. Obviously Amanda's there, but also we have like Stefan and Anna and Zach and yeah, Lawrence. And like honestly, it was just such a beautiful time for me, a time of acceptance, a time for being seen, a time to learn really the history of the movement, right? Like, okay, there are other people that think like this, but you know, what's the philosophy that underpins this, you know? And then obviously Lawrence's manifesto of visionary art was fantastic, and you know, I started getting the underpinnings of my understanding. So you know, so the academy, you know, as many people on the train know, was inspired by Ernst Fuchs, who was kind of the patriarch of a whole alumni of teaching staff that ended up teaching at the Academy of Visionary Art. And he, you know, obviously a force of nature, devised these amazing projects like the Apocalypse Chapel at Klagenfurt, and just an absolute force. You know, I've recently been showing this to my local community as well, and to show them his paintings and how his painting here, for example, inspired the alien from H.R. Geiger's Alien, right? So, they were contemporaries of each other. So, and this is, you know, Fuchs called this an angel, but you can see there's a clear kind of similarity between that head and the alien head that we see by Geiger. And there's the Apocalypse Chapel. And, you know, showing some of my elders this was absolutely wild, you know, showing, you know, a 10-year painting project that, like, you know, our teachers really dedicated a vast portion of their time and energy to was, and, you know, I'm waiting to participate in a project like this one day when the kids have grown up, I think. I'm looking forward to one of those type of masterworks. Yeah, just, you know, I think you can't have too many of these images. They're absolutely beautiful. So right there, I think something's frozen a second. Can everyone see that I've changed the screen there?
No, it's frozen here.
Okay. Shall I stop and start again?
Yes, I think best. Actually, your other profile, yeah, it's not here anymore. Yes,
Yeah, it's just come back on now. I'm not sure what happened then. Sorry about that.
And I'm so impressed you've been to Vienna Academy. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Oh,
no, this is where I was able to kind of meet the like-minded people, where I met Alicia as well, who invited me the first time around. So yeah, just really was very eye-opening. So this should be working now. Here we go. So there was another angle of the Apocalypse Chapel. And then this is Lawrence Caruana, the Academy director, who has done a lot to articulate what visionary art is about and to get his ideas down. And he's a great thinker. And as the director of the Academy, would chime in more about the philosophy and the alchemy and the underlying kind of occult story. And he introduced me to the materials of the artist by Max Dorner, who was he was a guy that ran the painting institute in Germany that was funded by Hitler, right? But this guy was able to take Renaissance paintings and put all of these materials under a microscope and actually study and analyze the chemical composition of the old masters paintings. And it was actually from this book that Ernst Fuchs revived the MISH technique, the mixed layered painting technique, as it's described in the book. Or so I was led to believe by Lawrence. But really, really incredible book that really impressed upon me the journey of our pigments, where they've come from over time, the nature of them, as well as their properties as an art material, but actually, the cost of the earth of these different materials, and just really started making me think about, every time I pick up a brush, every time I use my ink or paint, the amount of miles that this has done just to come into my hands. We're at this peak of alchemy right now, and it's really not lost on me. So yeah, here we are, Christ the Alchemist. I love Lawrence's use of symbolism. He really does a lot in terms of getting that articulated with it. I think it's frozen again, is it?
yes, it's
Let me see.
frozen
Let me see if
again.
I can share it from my laptop a second. See if I can. Right.
We're seeing your whole screen right now, but that's probably fine, I guess.
So I just want to make sure that they're in the right order before I click into it. Right. So here we go. Here we are. All good?
No, you need to share again. Cancel the share and share again only the image.
Okay.
Yes, good.
Thank you so much for your patience. Yeah, I'm not in my studio right now. We're kind of in between. I'm building all that right now, so we're getting there. Yeah, so Lawrence was a big influence there. And then as well, we've got it's not letting me flick through now.
So you're not able to switch the image.
It's not letting me go through, cycle through it all. I'm not sure why the Zoom keeps cutting out of my iPad. So sorry about this.
Mm-hmm. Well, technical problems, they happen.
Here we go.
Okay.
It should be working.
It's connecting and disconnecting, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on there. I don't understand why my why this isn't going left and right.
No, it's only one image, see?
Yeah,
Yeah. Maybe if you can try to put them all there.
on the
See
side,
here?
like,
Yeah,
yeah,
on the side.
yeah, okay, that's a good shout.
Drag.
Second. Okay. Okay, okay, we're on track. This will have to do, I think. Wonderful. So, oh my God. Nope.
No.
Thank you so much for your patience, guys. This is not ideal. So I'm giving up on the laptop. I'm going to try once more from the iPad, and we'll see how we go from there. So we've got Price Alchemist. Everything's working. We're just going to go with that. It's going to be fine. Here we are. There's our glorious leader. And our leader's leader, you know. I love this painting actually. Yeah.
Oh, he's freezing again, isn't he?
Now he froze.
Oh, Joe.
Now he's gone for good. Our interviewer. Oh wow.
The tech cobalts are dancing around on the train.
Yeah, too much energy.
Tell him to plug it back in and unplug it and plug it back in.
Yeah.
Wait 5 seconds.
Start everything over. Shall we pause the recording for a moment?
Yeah, I think so. Yes.
Okay.
And we are still live, right?
Yes, we're still live.
Yay. So everyone that's there live with us, our interviewer Joe has just dropped his internet connection after a bit of technical problems, and he's now back trying to share his audio, so he will be back soon. So please bear with us. We are just going to get back soon. And well, hey Joe, you're back.
Yeah, all in the flow, you know. It's like we got to dance with the tech, just like we got to dance with the storms and the raindrops and the sun and the Oh, you're muted.
There we go. Yeah, thanks for your patience. So I think I'm going to have to abort with the images, but I'm happy to continue just talking a little bit through some of my.
Yeah, can I press record again?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, here we go.
Hi. Thanks everyone for your patience, and sorry about the interruptions. So I've decided that because of a few technical issues, not being in my studio, I'm gonna just talk through a little bit more of my path rather than be able to illustrate all of it. But I've got as far as going to Vienna, the Academy of Visionary Art there, and studying with these teachers, picking up this whole skill set. And then I kind of went into this journeyman period, right? So after developing the skill set, I can show you some of the paintings from that time in real life. So that you get a little bit of that. So it was just kind of like learning to use the fluid acrylics and like the techniques that I'd learned, and just making it just kind of applicable as I develop my own visual language. Again, following this kind of process where I had learn to channel and learn to kind of allow whatever kind of come through. Yeah, and you can see a good example here how the style kind of evolved. And these two paintings are 4 years apart, but the same colors, and still the same kind of principle of, just seeing whatever kind of comes through. I still paint, light-hearted, fun stuff as well. But I think my heart is really with the more kind of experimental stuff. So I ended up getting the inspiration to paint this. So because I love the idea of like the brush strokes actually interacting with the curvature of a body, and to actually have these kind of underlying flow lines, and the way that there's kind of a harmonic way that a line can follow form, was just really exciting for me. I love this idea that I've painted these paintings on separate days, but what is it about this kind of flow? There's like this kind of harmonic flow that we get. No matter which way they're facing, there's kind of some kind of rhythm, and some kind of whichever way they are, there's just something going on. So this kind of idea that this kind of underlying force, like rhythm or harmony in nature, comes through me whenever I kind of get into this channeling mindset, was still coming out in my work. So to then bring that back to the body was kind of interesting. So I painted this arm in 2017, and then around, well, just after COVID, we built the shop, where we leveled up our premises, where we've got 4 artists here now. And I started working on like my partner's full arm. So she's got a full sleeve of all this real bright psychedelic type of tattooing, and everyone is painted on directly, very similar to the painting style that I've developed over the last decade. And so I build up in layers, and like I start big brushes first, and like semi-transparent washes, and I use stencil fluid, so I actually paint it directly onto the skin. And then once I've got that there, I'll color line the whole sleeve. And then over the course of a year, maybe 2 years, for some of these big projects, I've just kind of filled them in bit by bit, to create something that has never been seen before. So my inspiration for this actually came from a guy called Master Mike, who's in Austin, in Texas. And so he was very vocal about his use of LSD to develop a visual language that he would oil paint. And it's like this very geometric type hexagon-based kind of visual language. And these amazing, beautiful paintings, very, very clean, very, very technical painting. And then he would do great work to then bring that back to the body in a way that had never been seen before. So being a style that is mostly about the body and the flow of the body, that's what we call bio in tattooing. So bioorganic would be like, just kind of tree root texture going up the arm. Biomechanical would be where you have all pistons going up the arm, but fitting with the body. Well, because of the explicit use of psychedelics, and the sharing of that publicly, and then bringing that psychedelic visual language back to the body, I coined the term biopsychedelic. So Master Mike, I see as the first one who is overtly using these substances. And then, I'm kind of, the one after that. And, my aim is to basically empower other people who are into psychedelics, who've developed a visual language, who are also tattooing, to kind of bring that back, and see how we can broaden the scope of what tattooing can be. There's something just really fulfilling when you see a piece of art that is just about the creative act, that is just about the pigments and the distance they've traveled, just about that trust from your client, where they get to then be something novel, right? So it's a shift from the more traditional sense of tattooing as, art on the body, to, expressing the body as a new type of art, and just, celebrating, where we're at right now in terms of pigment and technique and all that stuff. So that's what really kind of sets me alive. So, a couple of years ago, I developed this book, which, really kind of helped me lay out the process for, what I was doing. So it kind of shows a bunch of the bigger projects, with a bit of a timeline of my work. But here you can kind of see how I've painted one on, and then, session by session, I work digitally to kind of refine what it's going to look like further down the line. I'd mock up different ideas, different concepts, different color palettes, just to try and help me get a few of those projects going. And I went from that one project on my partner to like 17 projects now, including nearly a full bodysuit, which I'm slowly working away at now. So, and I continue painting. I'll tend to have a painting spree for a month or two, and then I'll go back to tattooing, and it'll have informed something else. And, so this interaction between, visionary art, where it's, for me, a lot of visionary art is really about the ascendance of the artist, right? It's like the growing. A lot of people are articulating, the rising out of the ashes of the phoenix. There's a lot of very kind of figurative stuff that is more about getting somewhere, the growth, the inner work, but actually when it goes into the abstract stuff, where it's just about the materials from the earth, when it celebrates mother in this way, that's kind of where like my work is done on that level. I don't need to tell and articulate my processing and my trauma anymore, because, I see, my abstract work as a monument of when I have overcome that already, when I'm on the other side of it now. In some respects, there's still always growth, but rather than always looking for something to strive to, and always like, not feeling like I've done enough or this, that, and the other, actually having a pure expression, mode of self-expression, which kind of celebrates a point in time where I didn't let any of those negative self-images or those never feeling adequate, never feeling good enough, where I could just put those aside and just allow myself to be a conduit for something much bigger than myself, and celebrate these pigments. And that was just real, like I'm on the right track, like I really found a sense of purpose in that. So that kind of brings me quite close up to date. And then last year, kind of as an interruption to all of the other biopsychedelic stuff, I ended up writing a book. It just kind of intruded. It was a normal sketchbook for a little while, and then ended up being an exploration of hidden worlds, right? So the interaction between art and the beyond, right? I'd been experimenting with DMT and painting a tower, and while on the DMT, I could sense in this tower, who's this for, right? In the thought space now, through my perception of it now, I've created a thought object of this tower, right? Who's going to live in it, and just like this idea of, a type of realness in other dimensions of these objects that we create through our acts of creation and through the perception of others, right? And then, I'm kind of looking through my book, and I wanted to make a place for good, right? So rather than this dark tower I'd been drawing, I wanted to create like a hotel, the Compassion Motel, which is for all friendly aliens to be welcome there. And it was all in greens. And I kind of looked back through my sketchbook, which had all been painted in greens. And I was like, I've been painting the Emerald City, and kind of realized how the Emerald City is a really good way of actually articulating the collective thought space, right? Anybody in the Western world that has seen the movies or read the book has a mental image of this place. So together we have a shared understanding of that. So, the imaginal, right, within the collective unconscious. Carl Jung's philosophy around that, and it became very kind of tangible to me, and I used it as a very handy tool whenever I was speaking to my clients. My psychedelic tattooing and my other work tends to bring a certain type of people here, so I'm able to kind of have these conversations about it. Over a year, these ideas just ended up spilling out on a page, and the sketchbook filled up, and wrote a book that was all about kind of exploring how to build spaces in the beyond. And what's the practical utility of that? Well, for me, it was a place I could go and see my son if I missed him. I could hold him in his own special place within my mental palace. And to be able to kind of go in there at a time of need was just a real vital medicine. So even though it can be considered woo by many, the practice of meditating and sharpening inner vision and actually, articulating what is important to me within my inner space, like what towers would I build, was super healing for me. And so that book kind of railroaded all my art practice for a year. And then, I had experienced a little bit with the DMT since then. And but yeah, like having an experience where I met the consciousness of the spectrum of light, right? The consciousness of the rainbow, what the Greeks knew as Iris, the goddess of the rainbow. I felt that I met that entity, or I saw its back. I wasn't allowed to see its face, but I had this understanding that I've always been one of his or hers. I saw it in its Welsh aspect as envis, which is the Welsh word for rainbow. And I'd never heard of this before, but I kind of just assumed that, as this name envis popped into my head, the spirit aspect of this, this phenomenon in nature, the consciousness of that, was making itself known to me. And that it approved in some way of my use of just color, that it departed from human meaning making and was more about the power of pigment and what does color do to you? What does it make you feel? Which I was really fascinated by. So this idea of being a rainbow warrior, being somebody that I've come from so many different cultures in South Wales. It really is a mixing pot being such a large port town. I've got a great grandfather who's a Native American Cree, who came to the UK during the Second World War and was stationed here and had an illegitimate daughter that was my grandmother. So, as well as we've got some Spanish, we've got some proper Welsh, like the old Welsh kings, so we've kind of got this, by drawing from all these different cultures, I've got many tools to have empathy with different cultures. Like when people come in here and I'm tattooing them up, finding things that we can connect over about our ancestry, our history, and like what we do in here, that's really what sets me alight. And so the employment of the spectrum of light for me, the rainbow spectrum is like the employment of the chakra magic, right? That each kind of color corresponds to a different type of emotional empathy that we can have with each other, and that's what I see as being the rainbow warrior, somebody that can employ different types of color or different type of energy to match others where they are, and just have a deeper base of compassion with them. So I'm looking forward to kind of exploring that a little bit more. That's kind of where I'm off next. I've got another sketchbook in the works. But yeah, so after 4 years of being in my studio right now, we built it during COVID when I expanded the team. We've just taken on the building. We've just bought the whole building. I live upstairs now. We've just moved in. About 2 months ago, we took the keys, and I've started renovating out the back now. So we've got a 2-story woodworking workshop, which is going to be a vision train station. So upstairs is going to be a double art studio, mine, the resident one, and then the visiting one as well, with a dorm, with a shower for a kitchen, little kitchenette. So a visiting artist could travel over, come and stay rent free in exchange for maybe teaching a workshop or a few hours of a skill to local people just to pass some skills on. And then downstairs we'll have manufacturing. We've already got a laser, we've got a CNC machine. We're working on getting a giclée, as well as a design lab as well. So everything that an artist could want, if they're on the road or they're working at festival season over here, it's kind of with the international community in mind, but also very kind of local facing as well. You know, if one of my many cousins decides to come in and they want to, you know, use the machinery, they've got an idea for a business, well, you know, you can come in, and it's a way of providing for themselves that isn't as linear as a traditional job or whatever. So, you know, this idea of communal self-empowerment is kind of where we're at with it. And after seeing the VUC in Vienna, which Amanda had a residency there, which is this amazing complex of 150 different groups in this complex of buildings, which actually used to be a train engine manufacturing yard, right? So with the vision train, and within these old buildings that were squatted over 45 years ago, you would have all these different groups from art studios, photography studios, bicycle repair shops, bookbinders, you know, political asylum seeker offices for assistance for them. So having seen it when I studied in Vienna, having been imparted these tools and like this sensitivity towards the power of art, you know, it kind of all came full circle when the building landed on my lap. And, you know, rather than, you know, feeling, oh, look how great I am, I can do this for my community, it's kind of like I've seen it now, and if I don't do it, I'm an asshole. You know, like it kind of comes with a sense of responsibility to really kind of live up to the opportunities that I've had and the experiences I've had. So, and you know, showing up for the vision train here and now, having these conversations is just part of that as well, right? So being able to articulate myself, and I'm sure there are holes in my story because I've lost my pictures, and I'm sorry about that, but I hope that's enough to give you a bit of an idea of where my passion for this comes from, and why I love being part of this community. But yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Joe. Wow, you were so great. And even though we didn't have the visual part, but at least, wow, you bring your story into a full 1 hour of talk, and it's just so amazing to hear everything that you experience. And for me, it was just a surprise uh, to hear about it. And I don't know, Amanda, do you have some questions you want to share first? Because I have asked you, you know. Well,
Yeah, wow. It's so good always to hear your story, Joe, you know, and be reminded there's a kind of invigoration that gets translated. For those of us that are hearing similar narratives or are attracted to being a part of certain things, you know, when we hear each other's story, there's a remembering of one's own story a little bit that happens. That's because I was actually filling out a questionnaire last night. This had to do with brand development, and this has to do with South Main Gunnison, which you know of is also a vision train station in development. And Joe Bob has been building this, my partner, for many years. And we were looking at like, what are our references? What other places exist that are like this in the world already, right?
Yeah.
And it's such an interesting thing to consider because there's many different projects that have been influential, but none in their entirety, you know? And so it brought me to think about the unique differences, I guess, of such cultural hubs. And what many of us have in common here are also the impermanent cultural hubs of the festival, right? And those are places that have been very valuable for humans since the beginning of time, as far as we know, right? To come around the fire, the drum, you know, the feast, and to tell stories, right? And what you're doing, what you're talking about, what you feel this calling for, and I feel this calling too, many of us do, to create either the impermanent gathering, be a part of that in some way, or also permanent, like places that are not going to move. And that, when I look at the painting that's with me, you know, these and your first photo that you showed in your presentation today shows the industry, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm curious, in going forward, what do you see your Vision Train station, what is that going to bring to your community?
Yeah, it's really interesting, just to track back to what you said about how each of these culture hubs has this own kind of flavor, and I think like where we were in terms of like the Industrial Revolution, what we empowered through this mass export of coal around the world, and how we've kind of got this residue of that kind of post-industrial era that is yet to be alchemized, right? I'm the first generation. Like my parents were in the drug issues, which really came from the unemployment, after the industry bottomed out, so it took a couple of generations. So, and like, and Vienna's kind of similar as well. It's kind of built up, you kind of have this wild industry around, and then you kind of have this haven of ideas. And that's kind of what I'm hoping to give to my community here, is this haven of kind of shared mindedness or open mindedness, where you can kind of come and express your ideas without being judged, but just to be listened to, and to really try and listen to people in the way that they would like to be listened to, and also to point people to, like, here is the mission, right? We've got a sense of purpose here. This is kind of where it comes from. We're connected to this wider community, the Vision Train. We're connected to this wider movement in art, the visionary art, and this is what the ethos is, right? Is that we're trying to do this so that we can empower each other, so that we can, reveal a little bit about this hidden world that, somehow gives us sustenance, that somehow drives us forward and gives us a sense of value and a sense of, rightness to the act of creation, even if it's small and out on our own, in our room, quiet in the later night, in the early hours of the morning. Like, that is valuable, even though it seems so self-indulgent when you're doing it just because you love it, right? And just like connecting those moments there with a place and a community that can then take that and get that out into the world and just transmit that energy further again, and just really be, part of, like the stations, the train stations, they're not the destination, right? It's like, let's get some people on board, and like, let's get them on the tracks, and just to really, like, and maybe some will come and stop off, and maybe some will come and have a little look at, like, okay, what's it like from this angle of the world? What's it like having lived in this and come out of this? There's a lot of love here, right? But, there's 3 halfway houses on my street, and at 2 o'clock in the morning, you will hear people screaming, just shouting, and it's a very troubled place. But you know what? You give people some space, they tend to sort it out. Very rarely does it actually boil over than words, and so, like, I'm raising my family amongst this, right? So I'm really trying to just sit in the thick of it, and I think that that's something that we can offer as a community, of just like, we need to be part of the shift of this, right? And to bring people like that in, the complicated members of our community that are just kind of dumped here out of prison, or dumped because they haven't got anywhere else to live, and then actually bring them in a little bit and just help them reclaim a sense of community as well. So I really feel that there's like vital work to be done with those parts of our community here as well. Help them re-engage with the world in novel, in new ways, So, yeah.
Yeah, light stations, or a lighthouse almost, is kind of what it feels like. I'm curious, what do you have in your local community that is an ally for you in this vision?
Yeah, so recently I've joined Art Central Friends, which are like a gallery support group, right? So we've got a local gallery in the middle of town. I didn't know it existed a year ago, but it's been there for more than 20 years. And these Art Central Friends, they're all octogenarians, all elderly people that whenever there's a gallery opening, they will show up, they'll give out snacks and drinks, they'll fundraise, and they'll support artists that come internationally to visit and exhibit. So, and by chance, I met the director of, the head, who's running this community, and he's kind of wrote me in. He wants a little bit of fresh energy, some young blood, and, he encouraged me to do my first talk. So actually telling them about the Vision Train, and that there's a vast international community of people with a like-mindedness that leans in towards community.
And these people are community people, right? Like the actual director of this art group was the person who helped get all our legal paperwork together to buy our place. You know, if it wasn't for going further down that route and supporting his group and just helping, showing up for gallery openings and this, that, and the other. Well, it was a few months later, he said, "Oh, I can help you with your project, Joe. No worries. I'll help get all the stuff." So it's funny how magnified tenfold, you know.
I guess we lost him again.
A little
So I've been
bandwidth.
starting to kind of get into like the local community and just like who's already doing it, right? So
Well, I find it. Oh, yeah, you keep cutting out there. Give it a moment to catch up. I find it so interesting, the waves of culture, you know, that kind of go through each generation, that have this desire to reimagine the world, you know, and it's like we're not the first ones. I have to be reminded of that all the time. And it's like to not be discouraged. And I know we have some elders on the Vision Train that share this sometimes, you know, that were a part of the 60s movement, you know, in Woodstock, Rosie Rose and Lauren, and, you know, that have been a part of a lot of different communities that have been, you know, very experimental in breaking through old structures, and ways of doing things. And, you know, it's like every generation's responsibility to press the refresh button, you know, and look at it again, and also to learn from what are the things that didn't go well. Have any of you seen this documentary series called Wild Wild Country?
nope.
It's fascinating. The Rajneesh, it's Osho's community that like in the 70s and 80s, like moved to Oregon. Oh my goodness. And I've heard about this many times, this documentary, but I hadn't watched it. And I've been watching it, and it's fascinating to see the different perspectives of everyone that actually loves their community and thinks they're doing something right. You know, and there's a segment in this documentary where they did go and like swept up invited a lot of houseless people from different big cities in America to come get on these buses and come to Oregon, and they were going to register them to vote so that they wanted to take over cities and take over counties. And it was this massive movement, and everybody wore red. And it's fascinating because like there's a kind of there's a hope, and a hope of breaking free of old structures that hold us, you know, and there's a beauty and a liberation in that. And at the same time, it was also very destructive to the local communities. It's a fascinating documentary. If you ever get a chance to watch it, I highly suggest it. Interesting in terms of community, you know, and community that shares certain values, which all communities do. What do we have in common? And then what are the guidelines? What are the rules of a community? You know, and we push up against all kinds of interesting edges. If we don't define that early on, you know, and then at some point, but even if you don't, you're going to eventually have to, what goes in our community and what doesn't, right? So yeah, it's fascinating.
I couldn't agree more. And I think, you know, when I did a recent talk amongst all these people, you know, I took a few of my clients down who've been having some of these larger project pieces done, and to actually bring some of my clients who I know are good people, but, you know, would kind of get judged because they're absolutely covered in tattoos, and then meeting all these elderly people, and you can really see that you actually help shift how the rules are going further, right? Once upon a time, these very kind of traditional conservative types that support the art gallery wouldn't have really, like, they'd have looked down their nose at people with tattoos and just seen it as a lower type of art form. So actually going in there, I helped redefine what other people saw as acceptable, you know, and actually, you know, my clients just having great conversations with these people, just winning them over, you know, just in this really super nice passive way. It was just like, you know, I knew it was going to happen because I'd spent a bit of time with these elders by then, and they just want people to be interested in what they love, what they're interested in. They want to make sure that there's somebody there for the next generation who's interested enough to carry on the work that they've done for the last 2 decades, you know. So, and very often that's enough, you know, just to know that somebody's going to carry on the work for them. I think that was what was really kind of driving them to include me.
Amazing. I'm going to take this moment. I have to jump off the train for a little bit. I'm going to jump on from a different device in a bit, but I'm going to pass the mic to Marina. I know she's got some great questions for you. And Joe, I am so excited for your journey and to continue to weave the tracks with you. We met, I mean, it's like
7 years ago.
7 years ago. It's amazing. But I am so excited to come visit your train station one day. And I know Hani is on here too. Someday we'll have a train station in Iran. I know she's shared visions around that before. And we've got Karen Orr, who I think is in Israel. And we've got like friends and folks all over the world, you know, and Marina in Brazil. And it's just so inspiring to have these moments to connect from the heart with the amazing like light beings that are all over this planet. And I it's inspiring and invigorating to my life to be connected with you. So I'll see you again soon.
Thanks, Amanda.
Yeah.
Thanks, Amanda. We'll see you. And while continuing this thread of community, I want to know, how did you find the Vision Train? How was it? When was it?
So I think within the first few weeks of COVID, I think maybe about 4 or 5 weeks into that, Alicia dropped me a message, and you know, I jumped on every day since then. I think, you know, trip one was usually quite a quiet trip. There'd be between like 3, 4, 5 people, maybe, and maybe on a busy morning we get up to 8 or 9 towards the end of the trip. But it was just the right number that we could just get into these real deep conversations. And just like, okay, so what's actually happening on your side of the world? What's actually going? Because, you know, I did media studies in college, right? And my dad's an old school hippie, so I've kind of come with this sensibility towards, you know, not always trusting what is on the news, you know, and actually, you know, paying a little bit more attention to what's happening on the ground, you know, elsewhere in the world was just really like, especially through COVID, you know, there was a lot of very strange things going on, and to have this kind of validation from people that I'd grown to love and respect, and because we have this kind of shared vocation, it was like, you know, you could kind of count on what they was telling you to be the truest to their knowledge, you know, like it's not, you know, and so that was it. And then we did the Mushroom Magic exhibition, which was like a really cool initiative where we, you know, we painted our, you know, like little paintings like that. And, you know, Paul Stamets came onto the train, you know, and we did like a bunch of paintings to kind of celebrate different type of fungi. And, you know, there's, you know, learning about lion's mane's mushroom was amazing for me. So like it became this kind of vehicle then that we had all these kind of interesting little events and different tidbits that we could kind of pick up. But you know, and if it wasn't for COVID, to be honest, I wouldn't have had the time, you know, like you know, I'm tattooing for 7, 8 hours a day where I don't stop, you know, sometimes 10, 14 hours a day. And then I'm drawing in the night, you know, 3 or 4 hours some nights. And then, you know, I'm trying to build that and raise a family. So like, I don't spend much time online, you know, and this is it. Like if ever I've got a couple of weeks off, or there's a change in pace, or there's something like that, you know, I'll pop on for an hour, but it's not like the long paint sessions until winter comes around. And then I'm anticipating when I get into my new studio now, all my art stuff is already in there and it hasn't been unboxed yet. But when it does, I'm going to be coming and riding right next to you guys and seeing what we can come up with through the winter months. So I'm excited for that.
Nice. Yes. You've always been a writer for trip one, and trip one for me is like in the middle of the, well, early morning, like 4 a.m. to 10 a.m.
Yeah,
Super
that
early
was it.
morning.
So we'd have people that were like fully nocturnal from the States, you know, you'd have a couple of
Yes.
people coming through that way.
Mhm.
And then, yeah, it was just, you know,
And
it was so lovely.
you already host some trips here on the train?
Yeah, so you know, I think I would do a couple every week, one or two, or I'd fill in. You know, like I tend to fill in now. You know, I really liked Jeffrey and Molly's trip. I started coming back to that when I had a bit more time. Um, but then, just as I was kind of getting into the rhythm of showing up a little bit more regularly, like I ended up moving house, and it's just still upside down. But I'm very much looking forward to hanging out with that community as well. You know, like I like standing in when I can, you know, and trying to be helpful in service there, like if it's needed and if nobody else has piped up. But for the most part, like I you know, I like putting on a bit of music, but most of my trips just end up having conversation for 3 hours straight, just talking about all kinds of nonsense. You know, we keep saying we'll put the music on in a minute, somebody will turn up, and it's like, there we are, there's another 45 minutes. That's not happening just yet. So
Yes, because the talks here are so unique. Yes, we get to connect,
yes,
like what you say, with people from all over, and that's really
yeah,
precious. And about your story, I was super surprised to see that you already been to the Vienna Academy of Visionary Art.
yeah,
It's always like been a dream of mine being here in Brazil, and well, it's always been far, far away from my reality to be able to spend 1 week or 3 weeks in Austria
yeah,
and all of that. But they are all always have been my, like what you say, like my masters, like the inspirations, you know, Lawrence and Amanda and Fuchs, like the pioneer of this
yeah.
movement. And I want to know from you, like, how was this? When did you, like, how was the idea to apply? Like, how did you apply, and how long you spent there, and what was the course that you did there?
Yeah, so it was, you know, and I don't want to come off as cheesy because, like, I'm sure, you know, words like synchronous get used in this community a lot, but right. So I was saving towards an America trip, and so I'd just been putting away like just a little bit of money to the side here and there because there was a lot of flights and a lot of internal flights I was just kind of saving for. So I'd been saving for that for maybe 2 or 3 months. Um, and then I just had a little bit of a strange feeling about one of the guys in the shop that I was going to work at. He was also running a convention, and it just felt a bit cold. And then at the same time, I kind of saw that Jonathan Salter, who I'd looked up to as an artist, was going and painting there with Amanda. And I didn't know Amanda at the time. I didn't know anything about the academy really. You know, it was just like I'd seen his work, and I was like, "How much is this painting course?" You know, and I saw that the deposit was pretty much exactly what I'd saved already for America. And then, you know, I've got a son living in the Channel Islands, and the arrangement that I'd had is that, you know, I would see him every 7 weeks, right, until school, and then we would alternate half terms. So I did the first one after September, and then the next half term I wasn't seeing him was the January until the March, which was exactly where the trimester was in Vienna. Right, so I saw him at Christmas time. I went to Vienna. I came back, and a week later, I saw him at, you know, at the next holidays then as well. So it was just like, oh, that'll just. I think it was maybe like February up until April, and then I got a job there, which I was working every Saturday, and that paid for my whole trip while I was there. So it paid for all my bills, all my food. I was just tattooing there. I'd with Tatuarium with Anna Idze, who is also a visionary painter and artist. She's beautiful, and you know, she really helped me out. Gave me a bunch of clients that, you know, this one guy actually ended up and having a whole sleeve during my trip there, and you know, again, another synchronicity is the fact that I'd been doing painting nights off of my own back, right? Out of my own inspiration, I was doing a load of painting with some friends of mine, and one of those guys did this specific style that I hadn't really done before, which I learned from him, and was the exact style I needed to do this project in Vienna that ended up paying for my whole trip. So it's kind of like, again, this validation of like, if you put the energy in off of your own back without any thought of reward, like somehow it has come back to me and been beneficial in some way, you know. And I've had multiple instances of those over the years now, where it's like, you just kind of keep feeding this, you know, and like I keep, it's sincere. There's no expectation of something back. The process is still really enjoyable. Yeah, thanks, Karen. Take care. But yeah, it's yeah, it was just a really impactful time. So I was there for 3 months, and it was 5 weeks with Jonathan, and then a week break, and then 5 weeks with Amanda. And when I met Amanda, then like Jonathan was great in terms of teaching me about acrylics and like where I was at. But then Amanda taught me about the philosophy and the ideas behind visionary art a lot more, and you know, the idea of, you know, painting with light and the mission of art. And you know, she put us on a video call with Alex Gray, and I spoke to Alex Gray for the first time on there. And you know, I was just like, you know, I invited him to South Wales to come and have a cup of coffee. You know, just like, oh yeah, all right. But yeah, it was just like, it was very surreal. You know, it was artists that I'd looked up to for a long time, and then given a whole skill set and a bunch of tools that like I could see myself at being at that level one day. You know, like having seen the foundational stages of Jonathan's paintings made me like, oh, I could do that, right? And it's just a time, a process, and a certain rhythm of doing things, you know. And right, there we go, get on with it then, you know. So yeah, it was wonderful.
Yeah, I cannot imagine the experience, and also like all this bag of knowledge that you are just there, you know. It's 5 weeks with one teacher, then 5 weeks with another. It's wow.
Yeah, in the class for 12 hours some days, you know, we'd get in there for like 9, 10 o'clock, and then we'd finish by 10, 11 o'clock. Some nights we were there till 1 or 2 in the morning. This whole class of people, you know, we'd take acid and all paint together. Like, where could you go and do that in the world, you know? Just, it was just like all of us dropping LSD together and just painting on this, you know. And we got taken to a rave as well, and we did live painting at a rave with Jonathan, you know, learned how to do all that, and like what was required for the setup. And like, it was just, you know.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing. It's the experience that you feel like in real life, and also being able to share with others. Not like you're taking acid in your studio and blasting on your canvas. No, you're like sharing this connectivity with everyone. Yeah, literally mind-blowing, honey. And well, since you brought up the psychedelics, one question that I have for you: how do you think the psychedelics shape your day-to-day life and also your creativity?
You know, it is an important question, because I think anybody that's had a significant dose and, you know, had that period of self-reflection and reflecting over our relationships, right? I think as an artist, as a tattoo artist, my level of empathy for others, it has been very richly deepened, because, you know, the perception you get on mushrooms where, you know, if you think about your relationships or a loved one, or, you know, there's just something that, it's just this indefinable richness that you get about your connection to other humans, other people, you know. And I think that's something that has traveled through, you know, everyday life, you know. Like, I've got a lot more patience for people's bullshit, because like, it's okay, you're going through some stuff right now, you know. It always comes with that caveat now, you know, that like whatever we see is really only the tip of the iceberg, you know, and I think mushrooms help me see that about myself. It's like what I assume that people know about me is really only the smallest percentage, you know, and just like, and then, you know, switch that and it's like, oh, what I see of others is really only the smallest percentage, you know, and just then to, you know, have this kind of broader emotional base to kind of work from. And then as far as like my painting and my art style comes, well, similar to what I was saying about how, you know, there's a certain feeling about a line and about letting it come through you, you know, the pursuit of a novel form of self-expression that is outside of you know, human meaning making, right? Outside of illustration, outside of this stuff, where it really does speak to the minerals of the earth, right? It speaks to the ingenuity of humans, which I think is, again, it's a holy thing, right? When we develop alchemy that creates pigment that we do, right? I believe that that inspiration to kind of create these abstractions of nature, to be able to employ them on the canvas, even if it's something that has got this kind of moral bankruptcy because it's made out of oil or a distillation of coal tar, you know, it's kind of got this negative feeling, but actually when you create something of beauty that kind of helps others like lift them up in a day or whatever, you know, that's real alchemy, right? So really kind of the psychedelics really kind of put it into a position of, well, the earth suffered for this, and the earth bled for us to be able to use these materials, so appreciate them, and maybe do paintings that are just for flow, that just speak to these rhythms in nature, and that are just about you know, these really novel substances. You know, and the brushes, right? Like I was speaking to somebody the other day, you know, when you use a sable brush, right, you've got the hairs from the tail of an animal, the wood from a spruce from Scandinavia, and then the ferrule, the little bit of metal, was mined out of a mine somewhere, you know, and then through this process of hammering it out and rolled into a sheet, and this, you know, and that's just one brush, you know, never mind the synthetic ones, and even the synthetic ones are like, you know, human ingenuity, right? And it's like that's kind of come its own way as well. So I think like it was when I was on psychedelics, I was kind of looking at a pipe that I was smoking, and I kind of understood the story of the rosewood stem, and I was like, I'd had a sense of every time that got rained on, and I had a sense of the growth of the cherry wood bowl that I'd had, and it was kind of an understanding of a totality of all things rather than just the perception of it on the outside. You know, it's like this richer story that everything has, and I think having that. Having been woken up to that, then it becomes integral to, you know, my philosophy with work, and gives me permission to work from this kind of formless place. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, these relations of everything in nature that we can observe, and also the way that you work as a tattoo artist, and also you do costume work, right?
Yeah.
How is that? Like, how is your client brings you an idea, brings you an image? How is that work? How do you come up with the artwork to express the tattoo that the person wants?
So, you know, I've been training my sense of taste and my awareness of what's going on in the tattoo culture, mostly through Instagram. You know, like every day I can see what the best artists in any given genre are doing today. And having, you know, I spent a bit of time following that, you know, to try and kind of keep an eye on where things are. So if somebody brings an idea to me, I understand what, like a category, or I can understand their taste a little bit more, which kind of gives me, okay, well, check this work out, this work and this work, you know, and like, is it something along the lines of this? And then once I've really got an understanding of their taste, then I'll, you know, get to drawing and developing out an idea. You know, really allowing myself to be kind of client focused rather than, you know, working on, you know, my art stuff and the high art and all the value there is very different to serving community in the way that I do, and in that kind of ritual aspect of it, you know. So it's a very different focus. 1 second, somebody's just knocked up the door.
Yeah, that's cool. I just had to mute you, so you have to unmute yourself.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
I think it was just some hoodlums just banging on my window, seeing the lights on. Hoodlums. Anyway, it's yeah. So having that kind of ritual aspect of tattooing as well. Like my motivation there doesn't come necessarily from like my artist path or whatever, but from this other side, which is actually the practical application of my technique in order to help people in this ritualistic way. If somebody loses a pet or a loved one, I'm able to put that tattoo on them and commemorate something much bigger than my art musings to them. It's so personal, and it's, I see people at these very transitional periods of time, early on in their late teens, early 20s. It's very much like, I want to express who I am. I'm finding my identity and I get to be part of that. And there's the ones which, I'll tattoo a grandfather, the father and the son, all the same tattoo. And there's like this kind of family bonding. There's ones where people are on a trip and, I'll do 7 tattoos, little tiny things, all the same. And, it's commemorating a certain time and place that I know for the rest of their life, they're going to remember this because they've got this little portal on their body. So actually setting my awareness within that aspect of the work and just really like working from the significance of that really helps me connect to people and to listen to them properly. Again, it's the totality of each tattoo, right? And last year I kept coming across this word, the totality of this pipe I was smoking, the totality of these, the paths of our inks, right? Now the totality of what this tattoo is going to end up being. It's all of the thought and ideas that went into this 1 15-minute piece. And then every conversation that will engender, like with them and their friends and loved ones, is all in that little small thing, at the time of creation. And it's not lost on me. So, again, that's like a type of psychedelic awareness that has slowly worked its way into my day-to-day work.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I just remember one quote from Robert Vernosa, a great visionary artist, and he says like how the visual image that we see on our day-to-day life shapes our culture, shapes our relations, shapes everything around us. And it's something like tattoo can bring us for sure. This small symbol that is there forever and will have all these relations, all these.
Yes, 100%. And I'm seeing it now in real time. The longer that I've stayed in this, the more that I've drawn people around me like that. And, I know that I live in a bit of a goldfish bowl. I have a very kind of charmed perspective on things because, I'm surrounded by people that are excited to be here. People come here on the day off, but like, I almost feel guilty when you see what else is happening in the world sometimes, but then I just figure, well, this is my lot, this is the position I have. And there is being able to just be that for somebody else is, that sacred work in itself on the ground here for my community, and as we develop our networks and as we kind of, build our community spaces, maybe we can start thinking about the bigger issues, as a community then, but let's get the community tight first, let's develop a way of living that even though it's amongst all this kind of technocratic busyness, that we can still find our own peace, that we can still find a sense of purpose by connecting to nature, whether that's out in the grass in the countryside somewhere, or whether it's through a deeper awareness of everything we're using in this world. Even this iPad is of nature, right?
Yes.
And it's so weird to think of that, right? But human ingenuity is a part of nature, and really seeing ourselves as a weird, creative, thinking, dreaming organ of this planet, and just like sitting from that awareness is just like super invigorating. Like there's that Martin Prachtel quote, and it goes, as humans, we're allowed our folly as long as it is accompanied by the discovery of what loves us, by dying to feed us more than we love our hate, right? So as long as we love, every opportunity and are grateful for the opportunities that we have to create, and we can be these beautiful earrings on this planet, we can be this kind of, extra little bit of flavor and something that brings a very different experience for the planet as the planet, and we are the planet experiencing that, so yeah.
Yes. So I have one question that is related to that as well. And what was your biggest what was the biggest challenge that you have encountered in your creative, like in tattooing, for example? Yeah.
Yeah, so just that through COVID, when I was building this studio space here, you know, with the rhythm that I tend to take, I'll take a big project on and I'll deal with it later. So my difficult part was in the dealing with it later, right? I'd taken on this new premises. It was only supposed to take 3 months to fix the whole place up and get it ready with all the artist spaces all good to go. It took me 11 months. We had layers of asbestos on the floor. There was just like faults with the plumbing, faults with the electrics. But like, it was one of those like big lessons where like, just be patient. Don't fall out with anybody. Don't, keep you cool. Like, this is the time to just really just be easy on yourself, be easy on others. Why were you even expecting it to take so short? Like frustration with myself for taking too much on, and I bloody always do this, and I have my manias, and then I have my my down patches. I kind of have these cycles of my mood, which will last like 6 months, and then 6 months where I'm kind of the other way. Usually I'll just kind of shift into a different type of creativity or a different type of work or a new event and have something to look forward to. But at that time, it was like, no, I just have to sit with this. I have to scrape up every piece of this bad flooring. I have to, retile all the room because the guy that we had in to tile for us did it wrong, So, and they were just like, it just seemed constant for so long. And then, there was a point where we finished. And in the first week, I was stood. We've got a little snack area with a little sink and a coffee machine, and it's just by my buddy's room in the room next door. And I just looked at him, and we just both looked at each other, just massive smiles on our face, just like we work and we live in a shop like this. It's very different. It's not the usual shop where we've got like 7 or 8 artists all in one room. We have everyone's got their own room, so we really value that one-on-one connection with our clients. We can give them that kind of personal interaction. And that, was kind of the foundation for everything that kind of came after. So, it was good to get through it, but that was my biggest one so far. But we'll see how long it takes to build this community art project now. I'm 2 weeks into it, and I'm a lot faster this time, actually. I'm not second guessing myself so much, and I'm a little bit more merciless when it comes to like not getting rid of stuff, but like stripping the walls back. If there's like crackly plaster on the walls now, I'm just like scrub it all off. We're gonna treat it all. We're gonna, and you got to be a little bit rough with it sometimes, but just take a lot of energy to it, rather than just like trying to work around all these issues and just be really sensitive. Sometimes you just have to go in and just be direct, make something happen. And then once we've got the structure there, well, I can start calmly kind of placing things, feeling the place out a little bit more, and then opening it out to the rest of the world. So, yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Congratulations for you on your studio, and also on building up this new place, because it takes a lot of effort from us. It takes a lot of patience and a lot of financial resources and time. And yeah, how can we deal with that with all of the other things in life, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
no,
Mhm.
and it's funny. It seems difficult to prioritize sometimes, but then it always comes back in some way, right? And like, the hardest part, just for me right now, is like getting started. And as soon as I'm in, I'm like, I was only going to be here for half an hour. 4 hours later, it's still going. And so it's always there, but it's just like making that time amongst all the busyness. Yeah, I hear you there.
Mhm. Yes. And I had a lot of another question. Well, if building your studio was like one of your biggest challenge, I want to narrow more to, have you ever got a not a good client, like a difficult client, and can you share more about it?
I think I'm quite lucky in some ways because I know most of my guys now. I would say 90% of my guys are regulars. We have people that don't show up, and I tend to be patient with them. But because I've got a couple of months wait before you can get any work done anyway, the people that tend to give issues don't really want to wait in the first place. They're not patient people. So, to be able to, hello?
We're hearing you a bit cracking. Well, we lost him. Oh, well, we lost him again. Well, we're having a nice conversation. I hope you all here on the room and also on the live stream are having a nice time. I see on the Facebook there is Biljana Webb that made a really nice comment from Canada, from a community in Canada. And here on the room, if anyone wants to chime in and give some comments about what we were talking about, since I'm here all alone.
Can I chime in?
Yay! Hi, Nathan.
Okay, here we go.
The Zoom cuts the high notes.
Oh, it does? Oh, well,
Yeah.
I technically chimed in, but I want to
Yeah.
second what he's got to say about the materials.
Mhm.
I fell in love with grinding my own paint and finding out where the pigments come from. Like, for example, raw sienna is from Siena, Italy. And you go there and the dirt is that color. In that town, it's just dirt.
Mhm.
Like in Champagne, the champagne is just white wine. It's the white wine we have here in Cologne, Germany. The way men smell is just like the way men like to smell in that city. So that's when we talk about Cologne. That's what we're talking. We're talking about those guys, hamburgers, talking about people who ate meat sandwiches in Hamburg and in bologna. Americans talk about bologna like they're full of bologna, but in Bologna, it's called mortadella. They don't know what you're talking about in Bologna. You're talking about, the way you say somebody is full of bologna in Bologna is like cazzo di merda, rompecoglione così, questo tipo. You're talking shit. Get ready. Bring the receipts. Bologna. No, it's actually good. It's like a good thing to eat. People like it. It's not bad. It's not like the garbage.
Yeah, but what you were saying, like what the acknowledge of the materials for sure is
raw
so
umber.
interesting.
Umbria.
Yeah.
Terra Verde. It's from Verona, where Romeo and Juliet are from. Terra Verde, right here. Let me show you.
Yes.
Here. That.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yay.
Terra Verde, I love. It's a very transparent pigment.
Great.
You can use it for your shadows.
Yes.
So it will take on whatever color you add to it. You can make it red or you make it blue, you can make it purple even.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you for your share, Nathan. We will get back to Joe here. Joe is back.
No, I love that. Thanks for sharing. Nice to see some of those materials. I'm absolutely blown away with the paths that our pigments have traveled, right? So yeah, thanks for giving us a real life example there.
Yes. And glad you were back. Your internet was a bit unstable, and I think you're back with your background, this artwork of yours, this style that you developed. It's just so mind-blowing. And with your visual presentation, you could give us a little bit more of the path that you took to make this style, but I want to know a little bit more deeper, like how was this development of this, yeah, the style, like it's so unique. It's so
Yeah,
unique.
so it was again following that kind of feeling of just for me, there's a certain type of brush stroke, there's a certain shape where I'll be quite heavy-handed on that first impulse, and then there's almost like a relaxing of the hand, and just that kind of feeling, just like, and just working through my brush sizes from large to smaller, just kind of gave me all the structure that I needed to really kind of build everything on, and I really enjoyed, after a little while, the like gaps between the bristles, which would then create kind of striations. So as long as I was kind of keeping everything kind of, around together, I would then create all these little kind of islands, which I could then like put pattern work into. So let me just take you up to one of these ones where, I'd spent a fair bit of time in with one of Sanny's paintings, which we'd worked on together, but you can't even see it because I've got this bloody background on. Let's see if I can turn that off a sec. Here you go. So you can kind of see on this one, there's like pattern work going through it as well.
Yes.
So that was like every year or so, whenever I go back to painting, there'll be something new that comes into it. Either I've bought a new brush, so I've got something a little bit bigger, a new shape. Like I did a series of bottles, and I really like the interaction between a 3D shape and like how the visual language kind of responded to like the curves of the flow of the bottle, which eventually kind of led up to me working onto that arm that I was showing you before. So it all seems quite linear to me, like that it's the one led clearly into the next, into the next, into the next, and the origin really was like those space bangers, those little ones that I was doing at the conventions, and then those little backgrounds of color that then kind of exploded out over time. So yeah, really enjoyed just kind of allowing that to happen, and I still get excited picking it up now. So one of the things I really enjoy is like going back to the same color palette every couple of years. So it's like, okay, well, what comes this time, and I think for me, the next one is more to do with composition. My compositions used to be a little bit messy and a little bit asymmetrical and a little bit irregular, because I was trying to just be loose, right? But what I've kind of enjoyed recently is like setting up an armature and then just playing, with my flow to the armature, almost like, it's like it's a new set of parameters that I can then kind of set myself and be like, okay, what's going to come this time, and yeah, like kind of like how Amanda did with the egg, right? With all of her different kind of the flow lines within the eggs that she's done, just having a vehicle to kind of experiment and drive in, and just kind of play around inside of. So yeah.
And what about your book? You have a book, right?
Yeah.
How is it called, and how was the idea to come up with the book, and how is the sale going? And yeah, tell us more about it.
Yeah, so this idea of building thought spaces through our acts of creation and through perception, it really kind of took a hold for a little while. And the sketchbook that I was working in had, I was already working in greens. I was using DMT to go into a visionary state, and I was trying to bring something back, something that I saw that I could, and on one of them I did. It was like this specific egg painting that I did. I'll pull that up now with you in a second. Let me turn that off a minute. But yeah, I've got the egg here. So I've kind of gone in to the DMT space, and I'd seen exactly this. And it was the first time I ever kind of brought something back. And it was very much kind of like my style within an egg in incubation. And it's strange, isn't it? Because obviously Amanda's used the egg so in such a prolific way, but it never really come to me until I saw that, and I painted that. And because of that image there, I went into my sketchbook and I'd kind of seen this underwater bottle, like the small bottles with a ship inside. And it was kind of in the bottom of the ocean, but it was all greens. And because of that one image that I'd seen, the whole sketchbook was green, so that and I was about a third of the way into the book before I built this hotel for all the friendly aliens of the thought space, right? So, and then it was only kind of looking back, and I painted some green towers in there, and there were some green, different places and environments. I was like, oh, there's the Emerald City, so it really feels in many ways that it wrote itself. One of the other key components of it was, as well, I'd drawn a portrait of Julian Assange. So I'd visited an art exhibition in London where they were exhibiting, talking about his story. By the time he was released, it was 5.5 years in Belmarsh prison, solitary confinement. And so during that time, I had this idea that, if I had a book that could help him find an inner space, even though he's in solitary confinement for 23 hours a day, that he could just take himself elsewhere and build something for himself elsewhere to fortify him in this time of need. That was just an intuition or an idea that just kind of stuck with me. So that was kind of a driving force. And actually, I got the book finished in time. I sent it off to his partner, Stella, and she gave it to him. And within about a month and a half, he was released after the book was sent. So I don't know if he ever really got into it, but it was just like after, and that was after 8 years in the Ecuadorian embassy and 5 years in Belmarsh, right? So it was just the timing was bizarre. So that was kind of the underlying, and I'm not like, his situation was very real. You know what I mean? It's a book of whimsy. It really, like, there are these kind of core things in there, and there's a lot of signposting for other people that are kind of interested in occult stuff, and occult practice. But it's not one that, like, if you were to be cynical, well, that guy's in there in solitary confinement away from his family, what would a stupid book, what would that really do for him? So I'm really not trying to minimize how serious his circumstance was, or think that I could really help. I'm not saying that, but it was an intuition and it was an idea that I had, and it did propel me along. So I don't want people thinking like, oh yeah, look at me saving the day with my green book. It isn't like that. It was just an idea I'd had and I'd entertained, and it really was a type of psychic fuel to finish the work. So but yeah, so it broke down really nicely, right? So as the Emerald City, it broke into 3 sections, and the first section was the Yellow Brick Road. So it's all the ideas that would get you to the Emerald City, everything that you would need to get to the gates, right? So Scarecrow represented the search for the knowledge. So it's all about the ideas and the underlying principles you'd need to understand what the fuck I'm talking about. The Tin Man, looking for a heart, was about the right mindedness, right? The right heartedness to take into these thought spaces. So there's a lot of instruction there for people who are curious in terms of going deeper, like, this is what's worked for me. Actually keeping it in alignment with only good values has meant that I don't really have bad trips. If I do, they're to teach me something, but it was like having that clear, like, sincere intention that, like, I am going there to learn something about myself, to be of service to others, or to serve creativity. And that was always like a consistent thing there, so that was a way that I created the right heartedness in myself, and I feel protected me. So, that was the Tin Man. And then the Lion was courage, right? So, and anybody that goes deep into the journey, and I think there's a point where you're like, this all got a bit real, that's a big demon. They're goblins laughing at me and trying to make me piss myself, or, bizarre, strange, otherworldly things that sometimes will make you guess and second guess yourself. And again, there's a few pointers to kind of get you through that as well. So there's kind of this, like, it's a tripper's explorer's guide almost as well in those chapters, The second part of the book is, it starts with a meditation of like how to create your own inner space. And then, you know, it's kind of like, you know, I've given an example of my room and what I've built and how I've associated certain meanings with the things in there, you know, and the benefit of that being a place that I can go to fortify myself in a world that is very strange and moving and fast paced at times and with a lot going on. But I know if things are too hectic, I can go there. My loved ones are there. Those that I miss and that are past are there, you know, and I can hold the things that are dear to me there. So, you know, there's this kind of practical undertone of it. But then that kind of opens out to, you know, now you're settled and stable in your room that you've created, turn around and there's a door there. Open the door and that'll be to the Emerald City. So the idea is that, like, if you were to do it regularly, you'd like refine your inner vision, and then, you know, have this agency to then go exploring and building your own tools into it. And, you know, it's a bit tongue in cheek, but the idea that, you know, maybe we'll meet up at the end of all time and go and visit that place, you know, and just like, you know, just this idea of what thought spaces are and what the collective imagination is. And there's a couple of riffs in there about religion, about how, you know, religions are a figment of the imagination, but maybe imagination is just a lot bigger than what we give it credit for, you know, and just like this kind of thought space is actually, you know, that heaven and hell is a thought location, right? That they are, you know, thought objects that we interact with. And, you know, when we do abide by our 10 commandments, you know, we're setting ourselves our prescribed method of getting to our version of heaven or avoiding our version of hell, you know. So, you know, through my experiments with DMT, I saw myself as this entity that assembled reality, you know. So as a small portion of that, wouldn't I give myself the agency to choose my next life? Well, isn't that what this is? So I saw myself in Elysium. I saw myself as the artist beyond time, you know, and, you know, telling the story of humanity to the stars and going beyond, you know, and then once the story's been told, then I'll you know, we'll go to the oneness again, you know, or something to that effect. So, you know, just this idea of kind of, you know, this sacrifice of our life, right? This finite portion of our time on this earth, you know, it really is a life sacrifice whenever we create something, right? And like, you give your life for this. Like, so for me to then think, okay, well, that actually gives it some type of psychic power to create these thought entities. And actually that's what gives it the structure and the substance in that thought space, is actually it cost life to create. So it's a bunch of ideas kind of laid out, and it's kind of playful, and it has this kind of idea that, you know, by creating these places in the beyond, it gives us somewhere to go. So, oh, I can't hear you, sorry.
Now, can you hear me? Yes. Okay. What a vision, Joe. You're such a visionary person and you go beyond. And yeah, well, what is this finite life compared to the infinite that is our imagination, that our imagination can trip on, can go forth, can project on. And you bring such a collective of work and life experience, not only here to the Vision Train, but to all the community from all over the world. You're such an inspiring man and such an inspiring human. Thank you so much for your time and for your, for sharing here with us. It was so precious to know more about you and more about your work. And well, if you can share with everyone where you can find more about your work, yes, online.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, but thank you so much for the initiative here as well. And, you know, it means so much to be held by this community and to encourage me to express myself and come and do something like this, even though it's now 10 o'clock at night. And, you know, like I've loved every minute, like, and like, thank you for listening and just giving me, you know, feedback of the knowledge that there are others on this path as well, you know, because it seems way out there sometimes, you know. But yeah, thanks Hanny as well, and the others that have popped on as well during the trip. But yeah, you can find me at www.joescustomtattoo.com. That's my website. So there's like access to my tattooing on there. But a bit of my story as well, you know, I want to step more into advocacy for psychedelic use for creativity as I move forward in my path now. And I'm going to be at All Things Fungi Festival, which is this coming weekend, talking a little bit about my psychedelic initiation into creativity, and trying to, you know, start conversations about like the creative use of psychedelics. You know, like we see a lot about the medicinal use, but the creative use has been very profound in my life, and I feel it has been a large benefit, not just for myself, but for my wider community, as I've been more functioning and able to serve them better. So, you know, creative use of psychedelics, I'm going to fly that flag for a little bit longer. I'm going to keep trying that, but you know, we'll see.
Yeah, for what you explain, your book can be like a harm reduction. Yeah. For psychedelics, yes.
You know,
Yeah.
like I think it's one of them where, you know, we each can play a part of broadening the dialogue there, and it, you know, it's just something for me to get started at, really, to just start getting some of these ideas down. And yeah, thank you so much. Thanks, Brittany, as well.
Yes, well, what an amazing time. Here we have the sun setting here in Brazil. It's a bit past 6 p.m. in the afternoon. And well, thank you so much, everyone that joined here live with us. We have Nathan, we have Angel, we have Amanda, Rihanna, Honey, Brittany. Thank you so much, friends. It was really nice to be here with you all. I deeply appreciate you. And thank you, Joe. Yeah, much blessings for your life and much blessings to all the endeavors that you are coming in the future for your life.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can't wait to get out and travel. You know, as my kids get older, I'll be in Brazil one day. I'm sure I'm going to get on the tracks. And anytime anybody ever wants to visit South Wales, come and visit. And hopefully by then we'll have a space for people to come and hang out and do workshops and stuff. So.
Yay. And I see that there are a few persons online. Thank you so much, you guys online. If you want to join the Vision Train, it's a Global Art Jam. It's open for everyone that has a creative endeavor. And we are here every day. You can join on YouTube, or you can join on Instagram of Vision Train. You can know more about it. And also we have social media that's in Mighty Network that you can check also the calendar of the schedule that we have here daily. And well, I see you all again for the next Vision Training Focus that will be with our friend Brittany Monster that's here. Yay! Thank you, Brittany, for accepting this. Well, my friends, thank you so much for this time here. See you all again, and bye-bye. I will finish the live stream now. So, yay.
Yay.
Ciao, my friends. Choo choo.